Welcome back, children. In this unit, we will be taking up the third part of Chapter 2, Physical Features of India, and we will be focusing on the northern plains. The northern plains are often referred to as the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Now, you must be wondering why. It is because the three rivers have together formed these plains: the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra, along with their tributaries. And this entire region is rich in alluvial soil. Have a look at this diagram. This is like a cross section of the physical features of India from north to south. So, beyond India, we have the Tibetan Plateau right in the north. Then we have the Himadri, Himachal, and Shivalik range. And then we have a huge depression, which is the Indo-Gangetic Plain. And after that, we have a peninsular plateau. Now, this is also compared to a fold mountain. So, where you have the Himalayas, the three ranges, they form the anticline. And we have the Gangetic Plain forming the syncline. And we have the peninsular plateau forming another anticline. So this syncline, when it is huge in size, it is known as the geosyncline, and the Gangetic Plain are referred to as the geosyncline. The deposition of alluvium in this basin has been over millions of years, so it has taken a lot of time to form. The entire plain is spreading over an area of 7 lakh kilometers. The plain is 2,400 kilometers long, and there is a variation in the width. It varies between 320 kilometers to 240 kilometers. But yes, it is the most densely populated region in the country. Out of all the physical features, if you consider, you will find maximum number of people are living in these flatlands. The rich soil cover combined with adequate water supply and favorable climate is agriculturally a productive part of India. As you know that three rivers have together formed this plain, so the entire plain can be divided into three parts. We have Punjab plains right in the west. The central part is known as the Ganga plain, and the eastern half is known as the Brahmaputra plain. We will be taking up each one in details. A major part of the Punjab plains lie in Pakistan, and the rivers which are forming this plain are the Indus and its tributaries. So we have Indus, Satluj, Beas, Chenab, Jhelum, and Ravi. Most of these rivers are originating in the Himalayas. In fact, Indus and Satluj and Brahmaputra, which we will study later, they are all originating near the Mansarovar Lake beyond the Himalayas in Tibet. And the others are having their sources there. The entire section is dominated by doabs. You must be wondering, what is a doab? Doab is the land between two rivers. It is made up of two words, do and ab. So do meaning two and ab meaning the land between two rivers. So similarly, now you know why Punjab is called Punjab. So Panj means five and ab means the land between the rivers. So these five rivers and the land between them are mainly a part of Punjab. So that is why the state got its name. We now come to the Ganga plain, the central part of the central plains. Here we have a very important doab, the Ganga Yamuna doab. And the Ganga plain extends between the Ghagra and the Teesta rivers. It is spread over the states of northern India, part of Haryana, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, partly of Jharkhand, West Bengal. These are all states which are coming under the Ganga plain. And this is where the maximum concentration of people are there in the country. And it is like the agricultural hub of the country. We now move to the Brahmaputra plain. This is a region which is predominantly in Assam. Parts of Arunachal Pradesh are also a part of this plain. The northern plains are generally described as flat land with no variation in its relief, but that is really not the case. These vast plains also have a diverse kind of relief. According to the variation in relief, the northern plains can be divided into four regions: the Bhabar belt, the Terai belt, the Khadar, and the Bhangar belt. Let us take up each one in details. These Himalayan rivers, after descending from the mountains, they deposit pebbles in a narrow belt of 8 to 16 kilometers in width, lying parallel to the slopes of the Shivalik range. This belt is known as the Bhabar belt. So if you see the photograph which is adjacent, you can see the large pieces of rocks over there, and this is actually the eroded material which has been brought down by these rivers, and it is said that the streams disappear in this Bhabar belt. The other one is known as the Terai belt, which is just towards the southern part, and the streams are said to re-emerge in this Terai region. It is a wet, swampy, marshy region. It also has a thick forested cover. A lot of wild animals are there, so you will find a lot of sanctuaries present over here. The forests have been cleared in some areas so that people can practice agriculture. And it is said that at the time of partition, some parts of the forest were cleared to settle the migrants from Pakistan. Now, to understand this better, let us do an experiment. Have a look at the next slide. How the Bhabar and the Terai belts have formed at the foothills of the Himalayan range. Imagine that the mountain range is on this side. When the river is flowing down the mountain, it deposits all the large pieces of rocks first. And because the slope has changed, it was in the gradient of the land has changed. The flat land starts here. So this area, which has the larger pieces of rocks, forms the Bhabar belt, and the alluvial fans which form at the foothills of the Himalayas, they form the Terai belt. Now we are going to do an experiment. Imagine that the slope is like this, because when the mountain is here, the slope is gradually becoming flat. So imagine if the river is flowing from here, we cannot see the water because of the rocks, but the river is emerging in this belt. That's why when your books say that the rivers appear to disappear in the Bhabar belt and they re-emerge in the Terai belt, this experiment is proving that. See, again, I'm pouring water in this area. That means the river is there. Now you can't see the water, the river flowing here, but you wait and watch till the water reaches the Terai belt. Now over there you can find the water. So people feel that there is no river over here. The river has disappeared, but actually that is not the case. The river is there, but the rocks present in the Bhabar belt are hiding the water. So this is actually proving what your book says. I hope you understood the concept between Bhabar and Terai. I found this experiment very simple and it is easy for you to understand. Now, in talking about the Terai belt, As I said a few minutes back, that this region has a lot of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, because it has thick forested areas. So, one such example is the Dudhwa National Park. If you see that orange star in the map, you can see the location of this national park, and it is located in the Terai belt. In fact, that entire grey area is the Terai region of Uttar Pradesh. Did you know the Duars are also a part of the Terai region? So, Duars, which are the plains in the foothills of the eastern Himalayas in northeast India as well as in Bengal, they are a part of the Terai belt. The word Duar means door and forms a gateway to Bhutan and all the northeastern states of India. With stretches of tea gardens, national parks, sanctuary, and rivers cutting across the area, it makes it a favorite tourist spot in North Bengal. With the background of the Himalayas, this region is a paradise for nature lovers. So, some of the examples of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries are the Jaldapara Wildlife Sanctuary, the Baksa National Park, the Gorubara National Park, the Chapramari Wildlife Reserve, and the Mahananda Wildlife Sanctuary in Bengal, and the famous Manas National Park in Assam. These are all tourist spots and they are all a part of the Terai region. Bhangar is the old alluvium and it lies above the floodplains of the rivers and presents a terrace-like feature. The soil in this region contains calcareous deposits locally known as kankad, and the Bhangar soil is forming a large part of the northern plains. And lastly, we have Khadar soils. This is the new alluvium which is found on the floodplains. This is the younger deposits by the rivers. They are renewed almost every year, so they are fertile and fit for agriculture. So if you get a question like what is the difference between Khadar and Bhangar, so you can say that the Khadar is the new alluvium, Bhangar is the old alluvium. There are lesser concentration of Kankar nodules in the Khadar soil, but there is a high concentration of Kankar nodules in the Bhangar soil. Thus, the Khadar soil is fertile and the Bhangar soil is less fertile. The Khadar soil will have very fine particles of soil and the Bhangar will have coarser deposits because of the calcium carbonate deposits in the soil, the Kankar nodules. So the particles are less fine. So I hope this Khadar Bhangar difference is clear to you. With this, we come to the end of this subtopic, the Northern Plains. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson because I enjoyed presenting it to you. Have a good day. Take care. Bye bye, all of you.